In a previous tutorial, we looked at calculating the present value when there were multiple cash flows. And I want to show you how to do this in the spreadsheet. And this will serve a couple of purposes. First, it'll allow us to work with the spreadsheet and get comfortable. Second, it'll allow us to see how changing different variables affects the present value of the cash flows. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to put in the interest rate. I'm going to put in an interest rate that's equal to, we'll do the same example we did before, which was 6%. And here we're going to have the year. So I'm putting in labels, 1, 2, and you should recall I had an intro to how to use Excel, and if you're not familiar, you can copy these down. Excel's quite clever. It sees the pattern, 1, 2, it thinks you're adding 1 to it. So if you move the cursor over to the box in the bottom right-hand corner, it becomes a two-dimensional plus sign as opposed to a three-dimensional, and you can drag it down, and we're going to drag it down so we have 5. And the cash flows we had were equal to 1,000, but rather than type in 1,000, I'll tell you what, I'm going to put the cash flows in here in a separate cell. And I'm going to copy that, or I'm going to put the cell formula here. So you get used to doing that. So this is in cell B4, and I'm going to put a $sign in because when I copy this down, I don't want it to move. I want it to stay at row 4. So again, I can copy down. And so these are the same cash flows we had before. Let's put in our present value factor. Our present value factor is going to be equal to 1 divided by 1 plus the interest rate. And again, I could put in 0.06, but I'm going to put in the cell B3 value of 6% because that way I can change that number and see how it affects present value. So that's in cell B, and again, $3, so when I copy it down it doesn't change. And we have to raise it to a power. And you use they call it a caret or that hat sign, which is Shift 6 on your keyboard, and I'm going to tell it to look at A6. And I don't put a $sign in because when I copy this down, I want it to square the next term, cube the term after that, etc. So let me just copy one down. And if we go to the cell, see how this is now cell A7, and A7 is squared. So let's copy this all the way down. Okay, so we have these present value factors. Now, what's the present value of the cash flows? Recall from the previous tutorial, we take the cash flow and we multiply it by the present value factor. So we can do that by typing in B6 times, and that's using the asterisk key, C6. And again, I don't put any $signs in because when I copy it down, oops, I made a mistake. If you don't put an equal sign in, Excel thinks I'm typing a label, and the label's B6 asterisk C6. But I want a formula, so I have to put an equal sign in. B6 asterisk C6. Okay. Now it does a calculation. It multiplied these two numbers together, and you can probably see that if you multiplied 1,000 times 0.943396, this is what you would get. Right? You just have to move the decimal 3 places. And let's just copy that down. And then we wanted to, now that everything is in present value terms, we can just add it up. And if you go over here, you see auto sum. If we just hit the auto sum key and hit enter, it's just going to add those numbers up for us, and that's the same answer we got before. So let's see what we can do now. We can change the interest rate. What happens to the present value of our cash flows if the interest rate goes up? So let's raise the interest rate to 8%. The present value goes down. Okay? If we lower the interest rate to 4%, you can see that the present value goes up. So the spreadsheet is really excellent for understanding what happens. Rather than have to do this calculation 3 or 4 times, I could have asked you to calculate this, with an interest rate of 6%, an interest rate of 8%, an interest rate of 5%, and that would be kind of tedious. But instead, Once we've set up the spreadsheet, we can change that number. And when you get to more interesting business type problems where you're forecasting sales, but you're not sure, you have an idea of what sales will be, you can put that number in a separate cell and you can change it and see how does that affect your bottom line? How does that affect your profits and your cash flow? And so you can do these little simulations or these little scenarios to see best case and worst case scenario. So Excel is a great way to do this. Okay, we'll be using Excel throughout the course, and you'll be using it not only in the program in the business school, but you're also going to be using it when you get out in the business world. So it's a great tool to use, and I encourage you to use it as much as you can.